Hello everyone and welcome to Autocrat. This is episode 113. Priscus rigs an election. Spoiler?
Ooh. Sometimes you gotta do spoilers. But you don't know which election or for who.
That is true.
Sorry, for whom?
We left off with Lucumo, aka Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, getting in Ancus Marcius's good books, and working his way up to being indispensable in all matters. Let's see whether his career can advance any further.
Yay!
Spoiler alert.
Yeah?
It can.
It can? But I only hinted at that really strongly last episode and the one before.
Now, we need to talk about Ancus's death first, so...
Sure. Ancus ruled for 24 years, which is not that great in terms of Roman kings, as far as reign length go. He had taken the throne in 640 BCE after an unspecified interregnum between his reign and that of his predecessor Tullus Hostilius, but I'm assuming it wasn't that long. He now died in 616 BCE. Eutropius explicitly tells us that Ancus Marcius died of an illness in the 24th year of his rule, so he might have a cause of death. Orosius does talk about Priscus, but doesn't discuss the transfer of power after Ancus dies. The kings are being very much summed up by him rather than being discussed in detail.
Oh, and let's check?
Yep.
We have still nothing from Appian.
Yay! So helpful. Dio just says Marcius died without mentioning the illness, but we do have some sources.
Yeah.
Supposedly, Ancus Marcius died prematurely, if you believe Victor.
I do.
Now, this seems unlikely to me.
Okay, why?
A book called The Chronicle of the Roman Republic fixes his birth in 675 BCE, so about 3 years before Numa died, at which point the old king Numa was in his late 70s. Seems plausible, right? So, when Ancus Marcius dies in 616 BCE, he would have been about 59 years old. Don't get me wrong, by modern standards that's still quite early, but for the ancient world it hardly strikes me as premature. He was, apparently, more famous as a warrior and an administratively capable king than any of the 3 kings that came before him. Now, Ancus had his own sons.
Did he?
Yes, and they were almost ready to be men. Dionysius says one of them was just growing a beard and the other was still a child. The growing of the beard happens between about 14 and 15 years or so I'm going to pinpoint the eldest son as 14 in 616 BCE, meaning born in 628, and his brother may be about 3 years younger, so born in 625.
So 3 years younger, so like 11.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guess. We don't have any information on their births or ages, that was all we had. But I've done something as a kind of approximation to give you a flavour for it.
Okay.
Now, Priscus wanted the election of the next king to happen as fast as possible, and this is because he wanted to prevent any of Ancus's sons from becoming king.
Ooh. Machiavellic.
Very Machiavellic. A few days before the new election, he dispatched the sons of Ancus on a hunting trip. Priscus then personally went out and sought out votes and made a speech to try and get the support of the populace for, I don't know, just thinking hypothetically, me as king? Me, the person standing here? He claimed that it was not unprecedented for a foreigner to become king of Rome, as we've also seen. Not only that, but Priscus had settled in Rome with his family as soon as he'd become rich, and he'd spent more time actively participating in Roman affairs than in those of Tarquinii. Dio says Priscus won over the leading men of the city, quote, as the result of using his wealth quite unstintingly.
End quote.
End quote.
Yeah, this smells a lot like bribes.
It does to me, yeah. He was also clever and versatile, and had been made a patrician and a senator by Marcius. He was frequently made general of the armies and was given trust of the king's children and supervised the running of the kingdom. So I assume this means the children were still young when Priscus arrived on the scene. He also buttered up the friends of the king and never said a bad word to anyone. In other words, he's sucking up to make friends. Now, given what's going to happen next, you could also argue that one was 13 in 616 and so was born in 629, with the other being born about 2 years later in 627, but the ages are details. Now, when Marcius died, the people wanted to elect the sons of Marcius.
Okay, both of them?
Well, I assume so. We've had co-kings before, like Romulus and Titus Tatius, but maybe it's a case of any one of them will do, I don't know. Now, as we said, Priscus sent them away and swung the vote to himself, on the unwritten agreement that he would give them the throne when they reached majority. So hence the whole kind of, they're not fully of age, but they're close. Now, you're from a law background.
Sure.
Does an unwritten agreement to make them kings actually have any legal force?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think Priscus is going to see it that way.
Probably not.
He probably had his fingers crossed behind his back, though, and under the statute of takesies backsies.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, we'll see. Apparently, Priscus had also been raising these sons to be indolent and spoilt, making them less favourable in pretty much everyone's eyes. Ancus Marcius himself had also taught Priscus about the laws and religion of the city, and he'd been a loyal servant of the king, and Ancus Marcius had showered him with gifts. So if you were a commoner in Rome and you had to pick one of these two options, a bunch of spoilt teenagers versus an actually competent administrator the king liked, who are you going for?
The competent person.
Yeah, Priscus has a point, doesn't he? So much so, in fact, that he got a clear majority of the votes. So, he became the 5th king of Rome.
Woohoo!
We will deal with the beginning of his reign next time, and just to say, it's very eventful, his reign.
Okay. Now, let's focus on Priscus' origin story a little bit more.
Yeah, get some more details in.
Yeah.
And refresh ourselves a little bit from last time.
Exactly. The city of Tarquini is known about and is some 91 kilometers north of Rome.
Yeah, I can't remember the miles because you just deleted them.
It's relatively coastal, being found about 10 kilometers from the west coast of Italy.
Yeah.
Now, importantly, Tarquini is related to Corinth in the stories we get about Priscus.
Oh yeah, like we saw with Demaratus.
We do in fact know that Tarquini and Corinth were connected by trade and that Greeks had settled there thanks in part to archaeology.
Sure.
Also, the story of Priscus and Tanaquil would not be that unusual in the sense that we know that the elite of Etruscan society often relocated between cities.
Okay.
It is sometimes claimed that Lucumo, or Priscus' father, Demaratus, was evicted from Corinth by the tyrant Cypselus.
Cypselus. And yes, in this instance, tyrant is a political title rather than a slur.
He ruled from 658 or 655 to 628 BCE, so unfortunately the timeline doesn't quite match up for this story.
Yeah, or maybe they do, it's all a bit of a grey area.
That said, we do know that the influence of Etruria was rising at this time, so much so that Rome is sometimes considered essentially an Etruscan city rather than a Latin one at this time. Who knows, maybe the story of Priscus is meant to reflect this, even though our sources do not explicitly say this.
Yeah. So, we now have an Etruscan in charge as the 5th king of Rome, and some dispossessed sons, who are still out there, by the way.
Ooh.
They're probably not that happy.
I bet.
But that rather shorter episode brings us to the end of today's discussion. And it's specifically shorter because I know for a fact that the reign of Priscus is going to be jam-packed.
Alright, well, look forward to that, listeners, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. It's gonna be a long one.